the European Union is using the pretext of CSAM, which you should feel free to Google that if you don't know what it stands for. I try to be cautious about what I actually talk about on the channel to try to not anger YouTube, basically. But to justify measures that threaten to dismantle end-to-end encryption or E2EE and erode your basic right to privacy. And this isn't about protecting children. It's about increasing the governmental control over our lives. Meredith Whittaker, the president of the Signal Foundation, stated that mandating mass scanning of private communications fundamentally undermines encryption. Full stop. To understand the threat posed by the EU's proposal, it's critical to understand the specific mechanisms that they aim to implement fully. The European Union is considering mandating what is known as client-side scanning, and this basically involves scanning messages for illegal content on the sender's device before they are actually encrypted and sent. This bypasses end-to-end encryption by intercepting and analyzing in real time messages on that user's device. The proposal also includes key escrow systems where encrypted communications would be stored and could be accessed by authorities with the necessary keys. Another discussed approach is mandatory backdoors in encryption algorithms, allowing authorized entities to decrypt and read communications whenever they want.
What is wrong with you?
These methods absolutely undermine the entire concept of end-to-end encryption, where only the communicating users can actually read the messages. And by introducing access points for authorities, these systems' security is absolutely compromised, potentially opening a door for abuse and malicious actors, never mind the fact that next week they might change what they're actually saying they're going to be monitoring for. This approach has been criticized by many and is creating a secure backdoor, which is essentially is absolutely impossible. And cyber criminals can absolutely also exploit any vulnerability that's created by doing this. When they say it's for law enforcement, it's only what they can actually control. With these mechanisms in place, the EU's proposal would effectively weaken encryption, turning private communications into monitored transmissions, which totally violates fundamental rights to privacy and security. This move reflects a dangerous precedent and echoes past surveillance overreaches that prioritize control over genuine security. So let's just be clear about one thing. Encryption is either secure or it's not. There's no middle ground for that. And this so-called upload moderation is a thinly veiled euphemism for inserting a backdoor into our private communications. Europol, who, is always just absolutely on the up and up, claims that encryption hinders law enforcement from accessing problematic content, which is kind of like saying, walls on your house hinder us from seeing what you're doing. Why don't you take them down so it's easier for us to see what you're doing? Or, why don't let's set up a system where there's a master key for law enforcement. They can just walk into your house whenever they want to. Because, having a door might hinder them from being able to see what you're doing. Why not? Europol claiming that, it hinders them is absolutely insane. The reality is far more complex. Historically, sacrificing privacy for security has seldom made anyone safer. Take the NSA's prison program, for example, which was revealed by Edward Snowden. Despite collecting vast amounts of data, it did little to actually enhance our security, and instead, it expanded the government's control over our lives. Similarly, the UK's Investigatory Powers Act, also known as the Snoopers Charter, granted the government sweeping surveillance powers, including collecting personal data sets and performing mass hacking. The result? A massive invasion of privacy with almost no impact on actually preventing terrorism or crime whatsoever. It was just about control, not security. Security is the convenient excuse that gets the toe in the door. This pattern repeats throughout history. Look at East German Stasi, for example, one of history's most infamous surveillance states. They justified their extensive spying on citizens by claiming it was necessary for national security. Sound familiar? Yet their true motive was actually to control and suppress dissent. The constant surveillance created a climate of fear and mistrust without making the country any safer whatsoever, because, again, that wasn't the actual goal. Australia's mandatory data retention laws, which required ISPs to store users' metadata for 2 years, were also touted as a means to combat serious crime and terrorism. However, these measures did little to enhance security. Instead, they exposed citizens to potential abuses and data breaches as the government had hoarded very sensitive information. More recently, the UK expanded the powers of the National Crime Agency, also known as NCA, and police to be able to seize, freeze, destroy crypto assets whenever they wanted to, ostensibly aimed at tackling organized crime. Again, always a convenient excuse to tag along a boogeyman with that so that you go along with it. This legislation granted sweeping powers to law enforcement without requiring any arrests. Police can now, over there, seize crypto from suspects based on mere suspicion. Seize items like written passwords and memory sticks, and transfer illicit crypto assets into government-controlled wallets. While targeting criminals, these measures set a dangerous precedent for further erosion of digital privacy and rights. These historic examples illustrate a clear pattern. When governments demand more access to our private information under the guise of security, they're often more interested in consolidating power than actually protecting anyone. The EU's latest proposal is absolutely no different. It's a vain attempt to erode the privacy and expand governmental control. In the face of increasing surveillance measures, it's absolutely important to take steps to try to protect what very little digital privacy you actually have left. And one of the most effective strategies is to use alternative messaging apps that actually prioritize end-to-end encryption and are not owned by social media giants. I, for one, would point out Signal as a great choice. It's known for its strong encryption and its privacy features, and they just actually set it up so that you can just use a username at this point, which is great. Another option is Wire, which offers end-to-end encryption and is pretty committed from very little bit of research I've done to user privacy, and it has servers based in Switzerland. Threema is another Swiss-based app that emphasizes security and privacy and requires no phone number or email to register. Session is another excellent option, a decentralized messenger utilizing blockchain technology for anonymity and secure communications without phone numbers. You should always use your own encryption, never rely on anyone else's encryption. Decentralized platforms can also help you maintain control over your data, but don't get it twisted. Decentralized doesn't mean secure. Just because it's decentralized doesn't mean it's inherently secure. Again, always revert back to using your own encryption. Whether you're going for privacy or anonymity, Tor is always going to be a great option for you. But you also need to be careful. If you're going to be using Tor, if you're going to be logging into your Gmail with Tor, there's really no point to you doing that. So understand the technologies that you're using. Operational security is another key strategy to implementing practices like compartmentalizing communications when you can, using pseudonyms, and avoiding linking personal data across different platforms, regularly updating software to protect against known vulnerabilities, staying informed about privacy threats, like watching this video, and best practices through resources like the Electronic Frontier Foundation or Privacy Tools website, which has some issues, but whatever, they have a good amount of stuff there. Support organizations that fight against surveillance and advocate for privacy protections. This relentless push to undermine encryption and erode our privacy isn't about protecting us. It's about control. Understanding history lets you predict the future with way more certainty. Context obviously is critical with this, but just stay safe, stay informed, and take protective steps to protect your digital privacy. It's very valuable. In any case, thank you for watching to the end, and if you're up for it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It's a free way of supporting the channel that has no overhead for you. And as always, I appreciate you guys, and I will see you in the next video.